Hello and welcome to Stowhill Estates Meets, and today I'm back on the sofa and I'm delighted to welcome Marie Thake from Truly Inspired. Thank you for joining me, Marie.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's start with the obvious. Truly Inspired, coaching and training. Tell me a bit about what you do.
Okay, so Truly Inspired Coaching and Training was actually set up 14 years ago, and it provides leadership management development through exec coaching or professional development coaching, and through leadership development training courses. So everything from programs of events, which might mean 8-day programs, 12-day programs over a period of time, to one-off kind of day trainings that might focus on things like emotional intelligence, leading our teams through change, performance management, so anything to do with maybe difficult conversations or communication skills. And so it's a combination, mixture of my time, sometimes coaching, sometimes doing the training. So it's lovely to have kind of that mix in my day-to-day job.
Nice.
It's lovely.
And what do you find are the kind of most requested or most popular subjects to be supporting people with?
It goes in phases, and obviously you've got to think what's happening in the world around us, or outside factors that might be influencing kind of society. And so you tend to see some trends, things being requested. Through the pandemic, I did a lot more around well-being, helping managers to support, consider balance, how to offer people moving between working in an office environment to being at home. How do we still manage with remote workers and things like that? So we saw a lot of demand during that time for that training. And then we saw a lot increase around kind of ED&I, so equality, diversity and inclusivity. And now actually what we're having a lot of demand for is having difficult conversations, being able to manage, because people aren't always together, depending on the nature of the company that you work for. People are working in different flexible working patterns. And so I think managers are struggling to connect to their teams. And so they're struggling when there is something that needs to be said or discussions need to be had. They're finding that even harder because maybe the relationships aren't as strong. So a lot of work at the moment is coming in saying, how can we equip our managers to have brilliant conversations? Yes, around praise, motivate and infuse at a distance, but also if things get tough or we've got to have a difficult conversation, how do I have that when our relationship's not as strong as maybe if we've been working together every day? So I think you do see those trends, and it's about me as well predicting what might be needing to be required because of those trends. So over the years you've definitely seen kind of patterns for shaping and forming.
So what that says to me is that there's a really broad spectrum
of
different areas that different organisations or different people or different individuals benefit from or need at different points in time. And you mentioned things there like how things change during pandemic and COVID and how that affects the behaviours. 14 years ago, when you started the business, were you talking about the same things then as you are now? Because society's evolved quite a lot.
No, I think it was quite different. So when I set up the business, I had left being a head of learning and development for the Rugby Football Union in Twickenham and set up Truly Inspired. And what I initially did was they became one of my first clients, which is how the business began to grow and kind of get successful, which was lovely. And so they were my first client where I was trying out kind of transitioning managers. So maybe when people are moving into a managerial role, and of course we're not born with the skills knowing how to manage and lead. You're not born knowing how to delegate. You're not born knowing how to be motivational and write an objective and things like that. So it was very much when people are transitioning, how do we support them? And interestingly, over the years, we moved away from that a little bit. And now that's coming back really strongly now, where people are saying, do you know, we're promoting people to these managers' jobs. And a lot of time because they're excellent at what they've done before. So we've rewarded them with being a manager. But actually, we don't realise they don't have the skill set to do it. So we've come almost back a little bit to how do we make sure that everyone's coming into these managers' roles are really skilled, they're enthusiastic, they're positive, they're bringing that best out in their teams. And we now do a lot more around engagement. And I wouldn't have said people mentioned engagement to me 14 years ago as much. It wasn't considered. But now society's moved and realised that if someone loves what they do, they're aligning to the values of their business, they feel passionate and care, and we create an environment where they can thrive, we're going to be successful as a business. If we've got the opposite to that, we're not going to be successful as a business. So I think things like that, you notice that now a lot more work around engagement, alignment to values. And I would say 14 years ago, I don't think that was asked for or requested or as much. So yeah, there's lots of change in the 14 years.
So let me put this to you, because I find this interesting. So I've been in corporate environments previously and been through various levels of management training and things. I would say that it's probably true that some people are more receptive to it than others.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are almost a little bit hostile or sceptical, right? Do you feel like that is that something that's kind of evolved a bit as well, or is that a constant that you've just got different personality types that are harder to get on board?
It's important. I find people fascinating. I love people, which helps definitely doing the job. And I think you've noticed it particularly in a training room. So it's a different client every day, maybe working for someone else, different group of people. And what I found, it's very much about you as the trainer, understanding, showing emotional intelligence, which I role model because I teach it, me predicting how people might feel coming into that environment. And so it's my job to make everybody in that room feel relaxed, comfortable, that they trust me, that they're comfortable, psychologically safe to share ideas. No one's going to criticise that. And so I actually work really hard. It's something that I've done very consciously and purposefully since I established a business, that people walking into that room, some people will be nervous, some will be quite scared, some haven't had training for years, some might be worried, what if they don't know as much as anyone in the room, there's apprehension, and if I can predict those emotions, then it's little things that I do. So someone might come in and every single person that walks in the room will always be greeted by me. So it'll always be, hello, welcome, how are you? And I'm Marie. So instantly you've started that connection. I'd never be a trainer. Sometimes people are messing around at the front or whatever. People just walking in and sitting down, there's that disjoin.
Yeah.
So it's very conscious. And then I flex my behaviour to the group of people I'm with. So sometimes you could be with a group of people, and one of my clients that are working for an environment where it's been kind of more, so Corey is this company, it's an amazing company, and they're moving maybe from more manual work into management. There's always been a bit of a divide. And so they're really anxious because it's the first time that they've been in management training. So my job is I'll flex. I want to make them feel comfortable, relaxed, happy, that they're not going to feel that they're being spoken down to. It's positive. And so again, very conscious at the start to kind of minimise that. And it could be another day that I'm working in Citibank, up in London, and it's a different group of professionals, and they're very formal, and you want to make that formal connection. And so over the years, I can honestly say in 14 years, there hasn't been anyone I haven't been able to train, or I could probably count on one hand the amount of times I thought someone was difficult. Do you see what I mean? I think, and I'm quite proud of that, because hopefully what I'm doing is working and people feel comfortable and they feel happy to talk to me and work with me. And of course, coaching as well, sometimes people have volunteered for it and they want to come, and other times people have been asked to go. And again, you learn techniques early on where you'd say, well, how can I make somebody or this work, the process work, the best possible way? And I'll give you an example was, at the beginning when I started coaching, sometimes an organisation would say, we need this person to be coached and they're not performing quite as they could. Could you get them back up to performance, they say? And I'd go, yeah. And I'd meet them and I'd say to them, so, you understand why you're here? And they'd go, no. And internally, the business hadn't discussed with them why they needed coaching. So they'd been left to an external person. So I realised very quickly to overcome those barriers, or where people might be difficult or awkward because they're feeling scared or worried, I would always insist on a meeting with whoever's asked for that coaching, coachee and me. And you sit down and you agree expectations, goals, what you want out of it collaboratively, so that everybody understands what's hoping to happen out of that session. So when they come to me, they've met me, they're comfortable, they're relaxed, they trust me. And so I haven't had any objections with the coaching. So it's very thought through to avoid getting to a point where I'd have to deal with someone being challenging or difficult.
Yeah. Which gives you really nice continuity, I suppose. And also means that you aren't always the person that has to start by kicking the puppy.
Yes.
Which is never a nice position to be.
No.
So you mentioned that you're really interested in people.
Yes.
Is that how you ended up in this world? I mean, the RFU, you were coaching and learning there.
Yeah.
So how did that take? What took place to get you to that point?
It was brilliant, because when I left school, I went on and studied business and finance and very formal bit of law and a bit of accounting, these kind of things. And I went to work at Prudential. And I loved them. They were actually brilliant at so many things. Things that they had in place then, I still help to instill in businesses now, though many years later, because they were a great first company to work for, very professional. But while I was there, I was trained in all of the products that they learned, all the finance background. And then it was to help and assist people with understanding everything from teachers' ABCs, Prue bonds, all this kind of stuff. And they realised after a short period of time, said, you're brilliant with our customers, you're really good with our customers. We were wondering if you would actually consider letting us develop you as a coach, and you coach internally people to be brilliant with kind of customer service, to deal with our customers. That would be great. And of course I said yes. They invested in me. They paid for a lovely qualification, start off my coaching journey. And I was able to then realise that actually getting the best out of people was something I really enjoyed. And I carried on my career in learning and development roles. Then I started studying various other subjects. So neuroscience, communication, child psychology, and I loved learning. So kept collecting things, random things as well, qualified image consultant, things like that. And grew to the head of people, and I loved working at the RFU. But then obviously it was the time in my life and I thought, I want to do something for myself. I've always been quite driven, quite motivated. So let's put this energy in for me. And collecting all those kind of things along the way, I'd worked out what I loved, what I didn't love. I'd studied kind of values, I'd studied motivation. And so that's when I thought, I'm going to do this. On paper, it seemed I had 2 young children. It was like, and literally set up that business and thought, right, let's go. And the combination actually of the business and finance background combined with the people side meant I felt like I had a really good overview to bring customers and clients to say, I get it, we want to achieve this vision, you've got a strategy, you want to be successful, I understand all of that, but let's do it through our people. Let's get our people fired up, intrinsically motivated. Let's realise people are assets to be invested in, and then they will thrive, they will do brilliantly, and not see people as a cost, because some organisations do. And together, I can guarantee, if they understand all this stuff and it's joined up thinking and everyone knows they're a cog that plays a part in this brilliant vision, and you're going to be successful. And I think the combination of both sides that fascinated me enabled me to do that job well.
It's a good melting pot.
Yeah.
And I guess that's interesting as well, because that's the kind of, I suppose, the client-facing side of it. So in terms of how those... how that background and those skills helped you on the client side, but equally you're running your own business.
Yeah.
So there are inherent challenges with doing that as well.
There are.
In terms of business and finance and motivation and all of those types of things. So presumably that was, do you self-coach? Yeah,
it's interesting because I tend to role model what I preach most of the time, so if I'm talking about emotional intelligence, I'm thinking this is something I need to apply in my life, but you definitely go on a journey. We can never stop learning, so we're never a finished model, none of us, so we can keep going. But the key is noticing or identifying when you might need support separate. So there's a couple of times in my career where I've gone, I'm going to access some coaching for me. One time was to grow the business. So for example, I had a business coach for a period of time who challenged me on certain things, challenged me because I, for example, used to do quite a lot for free, for example. So I used to have great paying clients, but someone would say, could you just do this extra bit? And could you do? And because I love what I do, they pointed out that I was inclined to go, yeah, don't worry, yeah. And they were like, this is your time, this is your business, you're focused. And without that sort of interjection of coaching in my life then, I don't think I would have grown it the same. So I think the key thing was knowing when, I can do things myself, but actually when I need help, it's going and getting that support to grow my business too. So it's a few times where I've done that and it's really helped to get me to challenge my thinking, because I've only got access to my brain, same as everyone else has. So to have someone else's perspective or to challenge something is fantastic. I love that anyway. I'm very open. People challenge. If they can change my thinking or get me to think something different, fantastic. So I have... When I've recognised I need support, I'll get it. And also sometimes because you are supporting everyone else, you do have to identify when you need support because you are helping people with overcoming their struggles or issues in business. Sometimes you need support to help you because I'm an empath, which means you tend to take on lots of people's emotions, things like that. So it's to be able for you to have a sounding board as well. So definitely a mix between me being able to do things myself, but knowing when you need help and then going and getting it, definitely.
It must be quite, equally as it's rewarding, I presume it's also quite, can be emotionally challenging, draining, especially if you're coming at it from the position of somebody who is naturally empathetic anyway, and so you're taking on, some of the difficult emotions that other people are experiencing as you're going through it. Like, what do you do to kind of keep yourself pepped up, motivated? Like, how do you manage to kind of stay sunny side up when you're going into those situations?
It is hard. I think some of it's just who I am, I think. I talk to people about sliding scale. This is how I talk to people. I would say all our traits, capabilities and behaviours are on a sliding scale. So imagine we've got 0 here and we've got 10 here. If we're self-aware, we're enough to know where we are on that sliding scale. So we can take any of this. Let's take assertiveness. And I'd say, well, I'm probably maybe an 8 because I wouldn't do my job if I wasn't standing in front of people who run the business. And now, most times, if I've made good life choices, my 8's good, it matches. But there are going to be times where I need to flex up to be a 10, or I need to flex that down to get the best out of the situation. And it's about identifying when you need to flex and when you're all right where you are. And I think sometimes with the business, there will be times, especially with the nature of what you do, because when you're in front of people every day, you have to stay positive, you have to stay enthusiastic.
You're always on.
You are. And whereas I think some people, let's take that spectrum, might have to flex that quite a lot to get there. My being self-aware of where I am is quite high anyway. So it doesn't feel like a big flex, if that makes sense. It feels like just, and so it doesn't feel like I have to move that very much. It feels like it's something I quite like doing. It's quite natural. But there are times when I work too much, when people close to me, friends, my mum, something like this will say to me, I need a bit of a break, because they know I've been saying yes to lots and I love my job and I work hard. And then it's just about having some fun. So there is the fun side too. So for me, it's spending time with great people, going out and doing fun stuff. There's nothing I kind of say no to, really. There's some crazy stuff we've done over the years, which has been lovely. But it's knowing when to take that break, recharge. I like travelling, so it's travelling, new experiences, and then you can come back and you've got that energy back. And it is working out when you need to do that, to go, let's go and recharge, get that energy back, and then come back. And my kids joke I'm a bit solar powered as well. So it's sunny, so if I get somewhere sunny, I can come back, energy's restored, and being positive again. But it's knowing definitely when you need that and being able to pull back.
I think it's not a surprise because it's what you do, but it's a really interesting observation, and I think it will apply to a lot of people that we've spoken to before and lots of businesses that we work with, because sometimes people face similar challenges but in different arenas. And I think there are, especially as business owners, you spend a lot of time in that always on capacity.
You do,
and
definitely.
that can be really difficult for some people and it can be really natural for others. And striking that balance and knowing, being self-aware and flexing it, I suppose, is a really valuable tip. The other thing that I wanted to explore is, you mentioned a minute ago your business coach that you took on.
I did.
And this idea of the kind of recognising your own worth, essentially, as in don't give stuff away.
That was an interesting one.
I'm really interested to explore that, because I think for everybody that runs a business, there is this intrinsic thing of, if I do something, it's in my best interest of the business. So if somebody asks me for something, then I'm likely to say yes, because therefore they'll think well of me, and that's a good thing for the business. And I also think that sometimes there's a real, not reluctance, but almost a fear around charging for things.
Definitely.
Because the concern, I think, for most people is, well, if I say that's going to cost money, then they won't use me. Or they won't think that I'm valuable, right? So, like, how did you get past that psychological roadblock?
It was. I'm a big fan of kind of let's do it. Feel push your boundaries, go and try it, and then see what happens. So I can remember that one of the first times early on in the business where I put my price up. I said, look, this is what the prices are going up to. This is, what I need to charge. And I can remember sitting there almost a bit like this, like you wait,
wait for the backlash.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. And everyone just came back and went, yeah, sounds fair, great. And I just sat there and I was like, okay, so that's done then. Like we've overcome that. And it was one of those things where we tried it, and I was waiting, kind of like, what's this going to mean? What's the consequences? And actually everyone was like, yeah, which made me worry then that
maybe you should have gone further.
Maybe that's
keep
what
going.
I was thinking.
Sorry guys, wrong attachment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so I think that was one I had to learn, like we said, flex more, knowing your own worth, your value. And I think any small business owner has to go through that, I think, where you're trying to work out what am I worth, or my time is worth.
Yeah.
And the thing about what I do is it is me. So it's me they're paying for to turn up, to coach, to train. So you are really having to, I guess, get over that of, this person's paying me to do this. Do you see what I mean? And realise your worth. And I think, you're right. Whatever business it is, when you're a small business, you are trying to get that balance and overcome. And imagine, I work with people when I do the coaching, when it's performance development or something along those lines, they might have imposter syndrome, they might be carrying limiting self-beliefs, for example, and I help them overcome them, we work through them. And so I'm very aware that people in very senior positions, you work with an owner of a huge organisation, chief exec, still saying the same things as someone in other positions. I worry about this, and do we charge? And actually as human beings, we are wonderful. We're incredible as human beings. We've left this planet, we've got opposable thumbs, we're incredible. But we are emotive. That's what we are. We all are. And that means that steers our behaviours. That also means we're complex. It means we're incredible, but we're also flawed. That's all of us. So when you work with people, I think one of the key things is to recognise that about absolutely everybody. And there's nobody that's, like we said earlier, the finished kind of article. So we're all going to have doubts. We're all going to have fears. We're all going to have things. Am I worth it? There's very few people, I think, that have probably got through life without having any of those concerns. And it is trying to work out, let's try it, let's see. And if someone had come back to me and said, actually, that's too much, or a sample, or because of the relationships I build, which is what the business is about, is building relationships, I would have gone, okay, let's talk about that. Let's see where we can meet with that. And that would have been a test, wouldn't it, to see but if I genuinely thought, well, actually, that's what I want to say I charge, you'd have to think, wouldn't you, do we continue this relationship or not? Luckily, every client, every customer I've worked with since I started the business 14 years ago has stayed my client, in and out maybe over the years, different needs and demands when it comes up. But the relationships I've built have always been key. So when it's come to saying, look, this is what I'd like to suggest for next year, but talk to me, it's always gone well, because I think it's the relationship that's formed first means that enables that conversation to be good and healthy, and they understand. Whereas I think if anyone felt hard done by, or you hadn't treated them fairly, or something along those lines, that conversation wouldn't work. So again, a bit like I said earlier about making people feel comfortable in the training, the relationships I build with the people I work with are key to me to then make those conversations really easy. So it gets to that point and you think, I can have this because of the relationship I've built with that person already.
Because it's moved it away from being a transactional discussion to let's have a talk about how we're working together, and that's it, and the value that we're bringing, and those types of things. So I've met so many wonderful people doing my job, so many incredible people, and that's what I love the most, is just whether I'm training them, whether they're the contacts that have brought me in to work with them, and I'm always in awe of people, people and things they go through, how we have to learn to bounce back, how we just move forward in life, and everyone's got a journey. We've all got a story behind us, and that story has led us to who we are today. And we don't know anyone's story as much as they know that story, and that's what fascinates me, because we're always on that journey. So tomorrow you'll be slightly different again. It'll be slightly different again, depending on who you've met, who you've spoken to. And I think that's why learning and development and growing people I love so much, because you're part of someone's journey. You're able to help them be even better at something, or love themselves more, or develop their career towards something they want to do. And you've just been that little bit of that journey that you always hope they remember, they kind of, and I love it when people come back to me like years later and they're like, thank you so much. You taught me this and I've never forgotten it. Or when you coach someone and a few years later they go, can you coach me again? Because I've just got a new position and you helped me so much last time. Can you help me again? And you just think this is amazing, because you've been you get another chance to be part of their journey again, which is nice. Lovely. There's a saying in my family that goes back generations. Okay. When I say generations, I mean 2 generations. Okay. And I only found out about this a couple of years ago when I was getting something engraved for my dad for Christmas, and I was like, what shall I write on it? And I was talking to my mum and my dad about it, and his parents always used to say, learning all the time. Yeah. And I was getting a clock engraved, so that was why it was relevant. But it's kind of true, right? Like you never stop.
Never stop
and
learning.
I suppose that example you just gave of people that you've coached before and then they move into different roles and then they come back is case in point. One thing that I know is that I'm probably a good example of somebody who's really enthusiastic about stuff, but I'm also habitually organised. I make loads of notes about things, but sometimes I would struggle to retain everything in one go, right? Yeah. So you have to revisit stuff anyway to be able to kind of reinforce the message. Yeah. So putting you on the spot a little bit to see how we go with it. Okay. But like if you were spending some time with somebody and you were going to say, this is the big takeaway that I want you to walk out of this room today. If you don't remember anything else, this is what I'd like you to take with you, and this will help you elsewhere. What's that? I'm looking for free advice for people, basically.
Is this particularly about you retaining information or anything?
Anything. Yeah, and anything that helps people in the arena of we're all doing different jobs. Yeah. We're all different backgrounds, lifestyles, circumstances, etc. But must be some kind of thematic commonality, if you like.
I think it's the emotional intelligence training. I started studying that about 20 years ago, but developed more and more over the years. And any of my courses always have some of that in it, whatever it is. So learning how to communicate effectively at director level, delegating effectively, becoming a new manager, whatever it is, or even coaching when people have got to be self-reflective, mindful and learn about themselves. I always put emotional intelligence in there, and emotional intelligence means we obviously learn to understand ourselves and manage our own emotions. We can regulate them, and we choose our response instead of reacting. And the flip side, there's 2 kind of aspects to it. And the other side is being able to predict or understand other people's emotions so that you're able to adjust and flex yourself to get the best out of that interaction, which is a bit like the example with the training. If I'm predicting how people might feel coming in, I'm able to then adjust to help them. The emotional intelligence training is always the training that people come back to me and go, I love that bit, it was amazing, it's made me think loads. Whether it be I tend to go into obviously corporate environments, but most people come back and go, it helped at home so much, so in their worlds completely, at home and in work. And that's the one piece. If I did a course and there was a little bit on emotional intelligence in there, I think if you just remember that bit and you take that away and you just apply that even a couple of times a day, as in one time you manage your emotions, in a situation you're proud of that, another time you interact with somebody and it's more inclusive, so the relationship builds, you've made a massive difference to your life, overall. So I think that's the subject that I think if I could instill kind of and help everybody with would be the one thing I say. It just
cuts across everything.
Yeah, and I wish it was taught in schools more. I think some people are saying to me now it is in some schools being taught and maybe not called that, but around that subject, but I wish it would be included at a younger age, actually, so we can start learning that skill, definitely.
It's funny you mention that because there's a couple of people that we've spoken to before on this channel about different, various different things, whether it is financial advice or a few different occasions where people have said, I wish this was taught more in school. Because it's kind of it's life skills.
It's life skills, definitely. Oh, it's definitely, And it's such a vital one that makes a difference on on people's career successes, relationships at home, and it's just one of those that I feel so passionate. And it comes through because everyone says, you love this, don't you? I do love this. It's one of my favourite subjects. So when I get asked it, and that's been always consistent, but that's one, and we said what's changed over 14 years. I think 14 years ago, it wasn't as much requested, and now people are saying a lot more, saying how can we manage relationships. They might not necessarily know that's what it's called, but when they're talking to me about what help do we need, it's usually cited, it's about emotional intelligence, and they go, that's what it is, So I think now it's interesting because obviously we are emotive, like we said, as human beings, and it actually helps you to think rationally, to choose a response as opposed to react.
Reptilian brains and all that.
So it could be called rational intelligence. I actually think if they'd called it rational intelligence years ago, people would have gone, let's learn about that,
But you probably
because it's the emotion. People go, is this about emotions? And then you go, but you are emotive because you're human. So yes. But...
I mean, not that I want to stereotype, but there's definitely a large percentage of the population, i.e. mostly men, who will hear the word emotional and then they'll start to go, I don't want to talk about that. Like generationally, that's it's definitely something.
Yeah, it can be a barrier to people wanting to learn, is what people predict it might be. Does that make sense? And then actually it's interesting because usually people come in, I can tell they're a bit hesitant, and I make sure they're comfy and I explain really early on, this is what this is actually is. You see people relax, you kind of see them go, oh, right. And then they'll come with me and they're usually the ones at the end that go, I loved that. That was brilliant. And you go, fantastic, because I've taken them from, I'm not sure, to that was brilliant and it's going to change my life. So I get so much satisfaction. I love my job, and I love that transition when people come in and you've got them to the end and they're coming up to you at the end and going, that's changed how I've thought, that's changed how I'll behave. And you've been part of that. And I think emotional intelligence is the one you notice the most, where people are hesitant because they're like, you're going to get me talking about my emotions here. And then at the end they're like, that's just totally opened my eyes to a new way of thinking.
I think, do you reckon that's maybe because if it's different to how people perceive themselves or how they think, or different to what they perhaps do currently, there's like a reluctance and maybe sort of a reticence. Cool Runnings.
I love that movie. Yes.
There's a point in that where Yul Brynner says to Sanka, people are always afraid of what's different.
Yeah,
right?
they are.
Maybe it's a bit of that, right?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. And fear causes lots of emotions. When we talk about kind of that under the training, fear causes people to react in many, many different ways. You know, when we're scared of something, but it can be very unique the way people react. So people can shut down, people can get angry, people can get, and that kind of thing. And I think understanding kind of the next level of fear could be the start of something, but then it causes another emotion, if you see what I mean. And to be able to identify that means we can learn and grow about ourselves. But I do think people go on a bit of a journey when they start learning about it, because they're fearful, they're worried, and then they realise that this is something that could really benefit them. We've got emotions anyway, so let's learn about them, let's be intelligent with them.
Can't do anything about them.
And then actually, we can grow, learn, develop, and be even better versions of ourselves than we already are. So it's nice.
That's a nice message. So let's slightly move gear a little bit, because you mentioned earlier kind of your solar powered
energy
aspects, and the fact that you kind of never say no to anything. I know. And we know each other.
Yes,
right.
Of course.
And so for context, we're related.
We are.
Right. Yeah. So your Jules is Jules. Everybody knows from Stowhill Estates. You're Jules' cousin.
I am. Yeah.
So you and Jules do quite a lot of stuff together.
We do. We go on lots of adventures.
And I think that's probably a card-carrying example of not saying no to stuff.
Yes.
Like there's always something on. What are you doing this week? Oh, we're going to an aqua park.
We did,
or silent disco.
We did, yeah.
So like they're the fun things, and they
things.
help recharge. But like, how do you kind of channel your inner peace? Like, what's your zen?
Yeah. So this is actually. Particularly recently, where I've identified, that balance needs to be helped to make sure, especially because I'm not 20 anymore, so I have to look after myself more. I've always learnt about kind of nutrition and food, and I'm a strong link between what we eat and how that helps our body and mind link and things like that. So I make sure to kind of look after myself 90% of the time. That's the thing, and allow time for fun. But also there's time for things where, like meditation, been attending some things like sound baths, things like that give me space, which is really nice actually, because there's 100 things in my brain all the time, all different clients, running the business, like you said, training, coaching, writing courses, learning subjects. I raise my children, so running like all this, and a renovation project at home, so it's all a bit manic, and I need space, I need things to stop. So I kind of started exploring things like wellbeing sessions. A friend of mine runs some lovely days where you go and you get to spend some time in a lovely group with other people, and you do some meditation, Pilates, things like this. And actually it's a real time to rest. And again, that's a recharge. So it's combined with kind of all the fun stuff as well, which I really enjoy. There's still time to recharge as well and have that that space. And I think that's really important. And some people will love the things I've mentioned. Some people go, no, it's not for me. But it's for every individual to find what you need as your space. And those things work really well for me. They quiet my very busy, manic brain that's processing things all the time. It's just quiet space. So it's finding time for those things as well, I think.
It's really making important. Time for almost nothing.
Yeah,
so by scheduling it,
yeah,
which again is really interesting, is a theme that a lot of people that we talk to come back to us and said that, you know, the most important thing that we found is to schedule the time to do X, Y, Z. And sometimes time to do quote unquote nothing, but to allow your mind to be doing nothing. That you have to do it, otherwise you never create the space.
No. And climbing mountains.
They're the two big things, really.
So being in nature, I think, is definitely one for me. And last year, I climbed Penny Fan with a group of amazing girls that were incredible. And then with the children, my 2 children, we climbed Snowdon as well. And I think that achievement, that sense of purpose, and obviously that's a lot through my training as well, making sure people have a sense of achievement, purpose on a daily basis. We need it as humans. That definitely gave me that sense of achievement. I was so proud to be able to be out in nature and climb those mountains. They're not, you know, scrambling ones up Everest, but for me they were fantastic. And particularly the Snowdon one with my children, it was something we achieved together. And hopefully they'll always remember that we had that achievement. And we did that as a family, which was really important. So I think making sure we've got time for purpose, banking our sense of achievements, things for us. And again, it doesn't mean people have to go out and climb mountains. Theirs could be very different. You know, theirs could be going to walk to the end of the road, and that's brilliant for them.
Metaphorical mountains.
So it's fine. So, but I think definitely the outdoor space, the achieving, make sure you've got that purpose, I think is really important. So yeah, that's another way of
unwinding.
Creating
space.
Definitely.
You mentioned mind and body and food and nutrition. What's your guilty pleasure?
Still, I think probably chocolate. Still, it's all balanced. I sit there and people look at me straight. I haven't had caffeine for 18 years. I don't drink that much. Sometimes when I'm with Julia, most of the time I drink actually with Jules, but I don't drink that much. And I've never smoked, never done drugs, anything of those kind of things. Very healthy kind of consideration, but I think chocolate is still my guilty pleasure.
If you're going to have a vice,
it's nice
of all of them.
Yeah,
it's not a bad one.
No, and maybe cake because I love baking. Jules loves baking. Cakes we've made, I think.
So if you can combine the two into chocolate,
that's it.
You're on a winner.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say that you've baked a lovely cake and you've decided to whip up a lovely meal.
Yes.
And you've got some people coming around for dinner.
Okay.
Fancy dinner party time. Who's on your table?
Oh, anybody. Anyone in the world, or
you can have anyone living or dead.
Oh God, these questions. There's too many people because there's so many people.
But ideally, someone that other people know of.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
not like Dave from next door.
No. That's always hard because I think about this a lot, and it moves and changes because people kind of move up the list and people come down the list. It's wrong to. I think I've moved to picking people I think that we'd be friends with, which sounds slightly, stalkerish. But like Barack and Michelle Obama is on my list. Yeah. And like I just genuinely think, this would be a really nice dinner party. Both of them would be on my list.
It'd be nice to hang out.
And I used to have people like Kevin MacLeod from, because he speaks like 9 languages or something like that, and it just would be really interesting, And as soon as I'm doing the house at the moment, he would be. A couple of tips. I feel he'd be really useful and beneficial. Yeah. But over history, I think there's been incredible people that have changed and shaped history that I would like, especially women who've shaped history. I think it's been a lot, harder for obviously women to be recognised as brilliant leaders. We've still got struggles in some arenas. So I think women that have made a difference over the years, I think would be interesting to sit down with and say, how did you do this? Whether it was in, inventing the X-ray to, being the first women in management in certain companies. I just think they would be fascinating to go and to say, well done, well done.
and with your professional hat on, I would imagine that'd be quite interesting too, because there's also in a lot of different, as you say, different arenas, different things progress at different rates. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that have had to kind of put themselves through an awful lot of adversity. Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
To get to where their end product was, and that's that's now what we look at them and hold them up for and go, well done you. You've advanced the case and pushed people forward a bit. But that's, I suppose, that's probably innate in the fact that, like you said earlier, you're always going to be interested in people, and you're always going to have like a personal interest in the professional capacity. So it overlaps.
Definitely. And you and Jules, obviously, you can come.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So just me, Jules, Barack, Michelle, Kev, and Florence Nightingale. It'll be a lovely evening. I'll bring the chocolate. Marie, look, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great to chat. And if anybody would like to find out more about Truly Inspired, you know where to go.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you.
Pleasure.